In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the mental ray base lambert shader. Alright, so for this lesson, let's go ahead and take a look inside the hypershade. And the mental ray base illumination shader, or this base lambert shader, can be found kind of halfway down this list. MIB illumination lambert. So let's take this, drag it right onto our object. And let's just take a quick render of what we have. Alright, and you'll notice initially that this material comes out very, very bright. You can see that it is definitely washed out in some of these areas. Alright, this becomes especially apparent if in a scene like what we have set up right now, if we're using something like Final Gather to just add a little bit of secondary illumination. Now, the reason for this is that if we take a look inside this mental ray illumination lambert shader, that it actually has a little bit of ambience built into it. So by default, we have the ambience, ambient, and diffuse. Now the ambience and the ambient colors actually kind of work together. So let's just take a look at these one at a time. The ambience is the overall strength of this ambient value combined with the diffuse. So right now, if we were to take this ambience all the way down to black, there will be no additive effect between these two, and now we're strictly controlling the color through this diffuse attribute. So strictly now surface color. Now ambient, on the other hand, is a constant color value. So right now, if we were to increase this to any value, we have no effect. And the reason is because this ambience is set all the way to black. So no matter what values we set here, as long as this is set to black, there will be no additive coloring effect between these two. Now this additive coloring effect starts to become a little bit more apparent now if we begin to increase this ambience. So now we're taking this diffuse surface color and then adding on top of that this white ambient constant color. Alright, now this might become a little bit more apparent if I were to set this ambience or this ambient color to something like blue. And now we can start to see that as we increase this ambience to white, that means we're now using 100% of this ambient color value. And now we have just this constant shaded effect. Alright, and that's exactly what we get. No diffuse color whatsoever. Likewise, if I take this ambient all the way down to black, start to increase this diffuse color to something a little bit brighter, now we have strictly diffuse color with no additional ambient contribution. And again, if the situation calls for it, we can always start to mix and match these. So if we were to take the diffuse, set that all the way to white, and also start to add a little bit of ambience, if we were to color this, we can really start to see the effect a little bit more clearly. Now we're adding this constant ambient color effect on top of this diffuse. And by adding those together, you can see that we're essentially now coloring the unlit parts of this fabric with this flat diffuse color. So anything that's not receiving any sort of direct lighting is now being illuminated the same color as this ambient color that we've defined. So we can really start to get some very interesting color combinations through the different mixtures of the ambience, ambient, and diffuse. So that's a look at these very common color attributes that are found inside the Lambert shader.